so many of the other pros look at games and I kind of know I could be off stream and know these guys are going to bet this at this time in this spot. Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only sports betting podcast purifying the sports betting industry. And how do we do that? Well, we teach you all the tricks and traps that the sportsbooks deploy to try and take your money, hopefully making you a better over time. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at inplayLIVE. And if you want to see what inplayLIVE is all about behind the scenes, we got a promo code for you. That is Behind the Lines, all caps. All right, joining me as always, we've got the founder of inplayLIVE, Andrew Pace, in the chair over there. Pace, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. How was your weekend?
Betting wise, phenomenal. One of the best weekends I've had in a long time. It was one of those ones where just everything was kind of clicking for me, and that's always welcomed as a sports bettor, as you know.
Yeah, well, there's so much going on, right? We've got NFL, we've got college hoops. On Saturday, it's college football. We got NBA and NHL in the mix at all times. It seems like every day. It's such a busy time of year. So, it's great to hear that you did well, because that means that the whole community of inplayLIVE and everybody who's tailing you on the streams did well too, right?
If only it were that simple, hey? Hopefully, I would presume that the likelihood of the rest of the group doing better is higher. But how that actually all shakes out, you never really truly know. But yeah, actually, that's something I can touch on really quickly. If anyone is ever interested, you can always kind of see how we're doing when you head over to our website. I'll just share my screen here really quickly. If you're on audio and not joining us on YouTube, this is our inplayLIVE stream unit tracking that we have posted on a regular update that just shows our results over time. If you go to all here, this is from NFL preseason until now, and you can see 162 units. We're done, but you can, especially if you're an inplayLIVE member, you can just fire on here and go, oh, I wonder how they did yesterday, and you can see, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. There's a couple red blocks on this calendar here, but up 59 units in November. And 7 unit day yesterday, 6.4 unit day on Saturday. So those are the official calls that were made on our live streams, where you can wager with us in real time. And you can check that out. And as well as our other free tools, you just go to the inplaylive.com website, you click on free tools, and there's a whole series of different things there that you can use to benefit your sports betting journey at no cost. And that how we're doing, you can always check in and see.
That's just great to be able to have that kind of transparency, to be able to go and look and take a look, and you can see, if you miss a day, you can go and see, well, how did the group do today, and what were they doing, what were they betting on? It's just fantastic to sort of have that available. Really appreciate that. Pace, you and I were just talking ahead of the show, and it's great to hear that overall the weekend went really well. My weekend with inplayLIVE, I participated all day Sunday. Saturday I was a bit busy. I had a birthday party, my middle daughter's birthday party, but Sunday I was very locked in. Saturday, not at all. It was good to have a bit of a break, but we were, as we were chatting about this sort of before the show started, I was sort of saying how, expectation and perspective is always changing. And, on Sunday, I made $500. And if you asked me last year at this time, when I was still fairly new in inplayLIVE, I would have said, hey, I had the greatest day ever. I made $500, betting on sports. It was awesome. And this past Sunday afterwards, I was chatting with another member, and I was kind of a little deflated. I was sort of thinking to myself and talking to him saying, look, I only made $500. That's, I expect to do better than that now. I expect to be, to make more than that. And I've had many days where I've made significantly more than that. And so sort of just trying to find that balance between perspective and expectation, because, you want to keep growing, and that's part of the game. And when you don't grow as fast as you want on a particular day, it can be a little bit disheartening, but it's always so important to just kind of pull back and say, well, hold on a minute. I still made $500 today, better than losing $500, I guess.
Yeah, I think just as a general statement, and I think it's a really good message for anyone when it comes to really anything in life, is your expectations. Your expectations as they relate to your individual betting profits, your expectations with your career, with your family, with your day-to-day activity, with managing your finances, with the stock market. It's really important to recognize that the as Kobe Bryant says, the beauty is in the journey, not in the destination, right? And we've had some people that reach out where they'll say things like, "I'm really not where I wanted to be at this time," and you dive into it a little bit more, go back and forth, get some information about how their journey's gone, where they're at, and you'll get these comments like, I started with $200 or $500 or something like that, and however many months in, and I'm sitting at 6,000 or 7,000, or I'm sitting at 1,000, things like that. And every time I receive the same message, but like we were talking about before the show started, Shane, sometimes the way someone says something isn't the way it's received by someone else. So you intend to send a message that maybe tells a sad story, and it's received as a happy one, or vice versa, in so many different ways that the way you speak can fall on people's ears in a different way. So when I hear these stories, I go, wow, a sports bettor who's been betting on sports, an area that's known for losing, just contacted me frustrated about 4-figure returns over a significant period of time on a significant number of wagers. So when you gain that perspective where you go, holy smokes, I had a bad Sunday, I made $500, I expected it to be more, and you rewind the tape and you go, hey, this time last year I would have been ecstatic had I made $500 in a Sunday. So, having that perspective, enjoying the journey, and obviously at the same time, if you were a little bit disappointed with the end result on a particular day, looking at it and going, okay, why was I disappointed? And it might be for a series of potential mistakes or things that you would have done differently that you can sort of pack into your arsenal for the next time around. I know for myself, there's a particular account that I've had a bit of a battle with this football season that I notoriously get on a real significant run, and I haven't had that run yet. And I zeroed it out yesterday, and zeroing out an account is something that I think is common for big sports bettors. So if you deposit a small amount of money into an account and maybe your unit size is much larger than that small amount, it wouldn't be uncommon to zero that out. Now, when you go to responsible gambling and what you should do from unit sizing, your bankroll shouldn't zero, not your bankroll, but one account really shouldn't zero out, because you scale with percentages based on how much you're deploying on your bankroll. But I zeroed it out again yesterday, and it's funny because I keep finding myself doing something where I'm like, I'll just take my crack here and see if I can double my balance or something like that and get it going on a run. And I don't do that with other accounts. And I realize that that's something related to bad habits and also related to high expectations from a previous metric that I had been on in a previous season in that exact same spot with that exact same sports book. So, am I happy that I zeroed out that book yesterday? No. Did I have a massive weekend separately from that? Yes. So take that with you, on your journey into the next weekend, the next day, whatever it may be. And sometimes that means that you have to put a message up as your screensaver, or slap up a Post-it note, or go for a walk in certain scenarios. Like you never really know what that is, but just taking that sort of approach. And I certainly will be doing that with that particular account going forward, where I just go, hey, it's just another account, and manage your money properly, and stop engaging in the bad habits that you previously were that are causing this trend to continue, and go from there and enjoy the journey.
Got to enjoy the journey, right? That's what it's all about, and having fun. And I got to say, as part of this conversation too that I was having with this other member, I was saying how, a big part of the streams now for me, because I kind of know pace, like I know what bet's coming when, and I know, you learn things over time, and right, I just sort of learned how to look at games the way you and Kenny and so many of the other pros look at games, and I kind of know I could be off stream and know these guys are going to bet this at this time in this spot. And you sort of pick these things up over time. And a big part of enjoying the journey now is the stream is more about camaraderie and just being there with the group and betting with the group and having a good time and having a lot of fun, which is a lot, a big part of it. But you've touched on something, and I want to get to the topics on today's show because none of this was pre-planned for today's show. We are talking about responsible gambling. We are also going to be talking about PointsBet as it relates to responsible gambling and something that happened in the province of Ontario. We're also going to be talking about ESPNBet. So we've got a lot to get to, Pace. Why don't we dive in with this first topic of responsible gambling, responsible gaming? And there's a couple of things sort of underway. And this is a bit old. So if you, for people who have been watching over the past couple of months and you've been following us along on the podcast, you probably saw this on NFL broadcasts. But I'm going to share my screen here for a moment because this is Kurt Warner. We often talk about, or we have done shows about celebrities and their involvement in sports betting and the messages that they're putting out there. And so many celebrities being used by sports books to advertise their products and sort of really kind of make it mainstream. And, you know, anytime now you watch any kind of sporting event, you see all the ads plastered everywhere. And so we've actually got Kurt Warner, who is now participating in an ad. But this is more of a PSA, and it's something that I think is, personally, it's great to see athletes like him putting messages out there like this. But why don't we watch it, Pace, and then we can kind of get your take on it on the other end.
In 44% of games, the winning team came back in the fourth quarter. And 24% of games were decided by 3 points or fewer.
Here's the snap, and it is good. A heartbreaking defeat.
This game is unpredictable.
This is unbelievable.
And unbelievable happens. So, if you bet, set limits. Never chase your losses. And only bet what you can afford to lose. Learn more at responsibleplay.org.
All right, so there it is. So pretty hard to kind of disagree with what he's saying, right, Pace?
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about data, right? When you provide information that's factual, it can be more challenging to argue against it. And obviously, the whole celebrity space really right now is focused on supporting the sports books. Making it seem easy, making winning seem simple, bonuses, free bets. How you can make money betting on sports. And I give props to Kurt Warner for entering the space and entering it in a different fashion than any other celebrity that we've seen. I think that it's a good message. It's one where he's not telling you not to bet. He's saying there's data and information and resources out there, and you should expect the unexpected and the unpredictability, unpredictable nature of sports in general. So, and obviously we've talked about chaos in pretty big detail in one of the episodes of this podcast as well. So yeah, I think it's a great message. I give him huge props and kudos for saying the things that he did and partnering with the responsible gaming company that he did. So yeah, I love it. I love it.
One of the things that I am concerned, though, when I do see some of these responsible gaming messages that are PSAs and they're coming from groups that aren't the sports books, but these are sort of organizations on the side that are there to promote responsible gambling within a particular jurisdiction, is that this idea that maybe sports bettors are being conditioned in a certain way by seeing these, conditioned in a way that sort of reinforces the message of, this is recreational, it's just for fun, and don't plan to win. And I think, messages sometimes like this can kind of reinforce this idea that you shouldn't expect to win in this arena. That's kind of my personal sort of opinion on it when I see it sometimes. And that's the only area I think where maybe I have a bit of disagreement with it. But I don't know. What do you think?
We've actually had some in-depth and long discussions on the inside with the RGC and some of these regulators, and having been in those conversations and kind of been a focal point with some of those key people that are responsible for what ultimately gets put out there. I would say that it's a challenge for them because their entire presence is built on the betting world. So if the betting world ceased to exist, which isn't going to happen, that whole organization would also cease to exist. So you could, if the whole gambling space and industry just fell off a cliff and didn't exist anymore, you could argue that they'd be like, mission accomplished, we did it. But that's not what they're out there to do, right? They exist based on the betting space, much like inplayLIVE does. Like inplayLIVE and this podcast exists because of the whole betting space. So they have to they have to present information that's hopefully going to be well received. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of them don't know necessarily what would really help bettors. They just want the information out there to let people know, like, hey, you're not just going to win money. You're in an area known for losing, and you shouldn't enter it thinking that you're going to win. That is a very factual and true message. Like, you shouldn't enter it thinking that you're going to win. Are there outlying sports bettors that win money? Well, Shane, I think we know that there are, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, they're playing the hand they're dealt. And that's where some of the meetings that we've had with them, and I'm going to go back to how I started this, some of the free tools that we have available, they really do help you if you know how to use them properly in losing less or winning money over time, and actually getting the data and information. Like that data and information that Warner throws up there, if you take that to a whole nother level and start diving into it, there's money to be made in this industry, right? And in a big way. And we showed the results over the football season from preseason until now, with inplayLIVE. That's not fabricated. Those are calls that are made in real time on our live streams. So those mostly are backed based on data.
I was sort of making that point that they're conditioning you to lose, but you're right. We know that you can win at this, but it's not easy either. And I think maybe that's the main message they're trying to get across in a 30-second PSA is if you are going to just approach this, and you're gonna engage with this from the comfort of your couch and your phone, expect to lose, right? And don't play responsibly. Don't bet more than you can afford. But it's different, I think, when you join an organization, a group like inplayLIVE, and you are learning all of the tools. You're learning so many different strategies for different sports, and you sort of take all of that and apply it in a space where you are now, I'm not betting from my phone, and neither are you, Pace. We've seen your amazing setup. It's not like that, right? It's a different level. So I suppose people sort of need to understand that. Okay, let's move on, because also coming up into this space of responsible betting are some new statistics out from BetVision. Now, this is the technology provider that is making it more accessible for people to watch the games on the same platform where they're betting. And so for many people in the States, I think they're using it on Caesars. And the other big one is Fanatics. And you're able to watch Thursday Night Football, and specifically on Fanatics, and it is really low latency. We've seen that on the stream, Pace, with certain members having the feed, and it's coming in 5-10 seconds ahead of what you've got. And you usually have a pretty fast, very low latent setup coming in. And so the latency is incredible. But they're also finding that people are placing more wagers. So people are here's what they've got here. So during the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, when this technology was being provided by Fanatics, they're saying that users placed twice as many bets as those who weren't watching the game on the app. So people are watching, and they're betting a lot more than those people who aren't using the app. Surprise, surprise. The number is 54% placing in-play bets. So the in-app viewership, it increased 40% from week 1 to week 2, with 46% of week 1 users returning. So the people who are using it are betting a lot more, and they're coming back for it. Now, this could turn into some issues around responsible gambling if people aren't being responsible and they're betting more than they can afford. But it sounds like the technology is certainly achieving the desired effect for the sportsbook.
Absolutely. So I think that on that topic, Shane, there's a couple of things to really unpack. I'd say the first thing is the latency and the product. So we've got the spectacular low to no latency product that is BetVision. And if we had access to this outside of the betting app, and this is what YouTube or Google or Alphabet gave us with our Sunday ticket product, oh God, what a dream that would be, hey? But we don't have that. So the whole argument of companies like DAZN and some of these streaming platforms saying why they need to provide that latency and buffering and the quality of the product and all that, it is complete, utter, and total bullshit. BetVision has proven that. they've got a phenomenal low latency product that is as close to being at the game as you could possibly fathom. So props to them. We've talked about Amazon Prime and how good their Thursday night product is. It's actually a second ahead of that. Not that the second is that significant, but it's a phenomenal product. If you have a really good OTA feed or an OTA antenna at your house and you're thinking like, oh, I'm always the fastest, this is faster. It's much faster, right? So really cool product. That would be the first thing. The second thing that I'd kind of want to touch on relating to, some of the statistics that you just set at. Well, let's just rewind the tape here. Let's take sports betting out of the equation and let's take the internet out of the equation entirely, okay? If you are meeting a bunch of friends and all of your friends say, oh, we're at the bar at the casino, come meet us there. Are you more likely or less likely to place a bet that night than if you didn't go there? Well, of course, the answer is you're much more likely to place a bet if you're having a drink at the casino bar versus one where you're not. So what BetVision is offering these sports books is a significant competitive advantage. And the reason for that is because if I am going to watch an NFL game, I am going to watch it oftentimes now in the world with cable cutting is on some sort of mobile device that, yeah, maybe I can cast to my TV or put up on my screen. I know that's a challenge with the sports books and BetVision, but a lot of us are using our devices to watch the game. Well, I'm going to watch it where I can get the fastest and best access to information. If it's up on my TV and it's a minute behind this BetVision app, I'm probably going to watch it on BetVision. On top of that, there's a sense of pride associated with that. You might text your fantasy group that someone scored and they'll be like, how is he doing this? Because you're using this particular app that creates this sort of like elusive, like, how is he doing this? Right. So there's that element to it. But then of course, once you're in that ecosystem, you are now seeing the betting lines, and the way they've got it structured is some of those lines are actually available in the broadcast. So you're actually seeing some data, some statistics, and some actual real-time lines. And that line might pop up and you're just watching the game and you're like, oh my God, my favorite team pays 5-1 to come back. Or like, oh my God, there's no way this team's losing. And look at what the number is. Right. And then all of a sudden they've got you thinking about betting. They've got you in that casino bar where the roulette wheel is and the blackjack table is, and it's all there. Now, that would bring me to kind of my third discussion or third point relating to BetVision is they have the most competitive product right now in this space. Sportsbooks are offering it as a competitive advantage. And those statistics that you just threw out there, they're pretty compelling. Like, if you don't have BetVision and aren't offering the games with this great feed, you're missing out on that added revenue, those added wagers, and that added interaction time in your betting ecosystem on the app. So we've done this whole thing and this whole segment on odds providers and what's under the hood of a sports book, and that some of these sports books aren't exactly the same as the ones that or are the same as some of the other ones that are their biggest competitors. Now you throw in this whole BetVision discussion and what's going on with them. And now it is the sports books, not only reliant upon the odds providers, but now how they're also going to be offering these games. So it's pretty crazy. Long term, does everyone have to have a BetVision to succeed? Will new competitors come into this space? Will it be the norm to be watching sports on the sports books instead of on our TVs? Like, that's kind of where this is all headed, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very exciting, though, to think that, geez, if sports books want to compete, they're going to have to go down this route and provide this, ultra low latent feed. I mean, it's just, it's a music to our ears, I think, as sports bettors, to be able to have these feeds, which is just incredible. But it also sort of fits into the whole cable cutting and all that's whole trend, and people moving away from old-fashioned television, and maybe they will be watching it on not just on their sports books, but on their phones, and you've got the big 80, I don't know, I'm going to say 80 inch. It's probably a lot bigger than that, but your big TV wall, and meanwhile you're watching the game right here on your phone, like this close. It's just such an interesting time we live in, and the way it's developing, right?
It's bigger than 80, and no, I'm not watching on my phone. But like, yeah, I'm using devices like that to get it up on. I'm using devices to get it up on the wall, right? And yeah, I mean, I just look at this whole thing, and it's like the betting companies are becoming reliant upon these other companies to stay competitive, but then the competitive advantage gets taken away because then they're all using the same odds providers or similar odds providers, and then now these same data services, and then now these same streaming services. Yeah, interesting times.
It really is. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about another sports book, and this sort of fits into the whole responsible gambling conversation because it's really sort of fascinating what took place here in the province of Ontario earlier this month. PointsBet was fined to the tune of $150,000 for failing to meet Ontario's responsible gambling requirements. So let me set the stage here for you and kind of give you the backstory. A player lost $500,000 over a 3-month period. And the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, which enforces the regulations here in the province of Ontario, said PointsBet should have intervened and provided assistance to this player who was potentially experiencing gambling harms. The AGCO says PointsBet's own systems flagged this individual, but nothing was done. It also says the company, there were some other alleged violations that included communicating gambling inducements, bonuses, or credits through direct advertising without the player's consent. So that would be, emails, texts without the player consenting to it. And then it also failed to enforce the 24-hour cooling off period when the player canceled their per day deposit limits. So $500,000 lost over a 3-month period. They kept texting and emailing this player, and they didn't respect the 24-hour cooling off period. Player loses $500,000. The sports book fined by the regulator for $150,000. What do you think?
The book made $500,000 off this guy. They only got fined $150,000. If the guy truly, had opted out for not being contacted, by the sports book, and then he keeps getting contacted for these promotions, and it caused him to keep losing. Who gets the $150,000 fine? It doesn't go to the player. Like I feel like the player it actually sounds like he was. I'm a big believer in you're an adult, you make your own decisions, all that kind of stuff. He could have not gambled that money away and lost it all. But at the same time, if he had opted out of some of these promotions and put cooling periods or restrictions on his account that then got bypassed, I think he would be entitled to some of that money back if there is any sort of legislature written around that. The whole industry is full of this. Obviously, these sports books have a fiduciary responsibility to make as much money as they can, and they're going to do that in a whole series of different ways. The regulators need to be there to protect all parties. They're not, in my opinion, but they need to protect the player in that circumstance. And at the same time, the sports books need to be profitable. So what do I think about that, Shane? Well, I want that PointsBet account. Give it to me. That one's nicely buttered.
Yeah, you'll maybe you can help that guy out too down the line or something, right? But to think that $500,000 lost, the company fine, so they're guilty of violating the regulators' laws and regulations that are put in place. But $150,000 penalty seems like absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. And clearly, PointsBet, if you sort of just take the $150,000 out of the $500,000 they made, well, they're still left with $350,000. For them, it was a profitable rule break. And will this $150,000 make them think twice?
Yeah, and totally good point. Like on top of that, this is such an outlying example. How many of us have $500,000 to lose, right? So this is happening probably that spotlights this scenario. Well, those practices would be happening at the $1,000, the $500 level, like the smaller player level that just don't get exposed or talked about or that people necessarily care about. But there's also an argument to be made that $500,000 that person lost, well, he had access to $500,000, which means he's in a much better financial situation than a lot of the people that have that have lost $100 or $500 or $1,000. So if the masses are being exposed to these practices at a much smaller scale, those are the people that need the money the most, and oftentimes are using this space as sort of like a get rich quick scheme, or like, maybe I can pay my rent if I just hit this parlay. Like those types of discussions, will go through people's minds as they're placing the bets. Like, oh my God, if I win this, I'm going to do this. Like, all the behavior associated with the gambling space. So when you put that all together, you go, this is barely even a slap on the wrist for a pretty prominent sports book and betting company that is likely doing this on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like the damage done to this individual player may not be as significant in their life as maybe another player losing $100,000 over that same time frame, right? Because maybe that player who lost $100,000 is now losing their home, or losing their family, and going through a divorce or something because of it. Whereas maybe this other player who lost $500,000 is kind of like, well, I've got a couple million still in the bank and he's good to go, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a sort of an interesting way to kind of look at things. Okay, I want to move on to another sports book, ESPNBet, now live in the United States. Pace, we talked about this significantly here on the podcast, and sort of the winding road that has led to the creation of this sports book. So you'll remember Barstool Sports, owned by Dave Portnoy, was operating as a sports book, Barstool Sports, the sports book, and they had Cambi lines, and they were a source that people could go to get those Cambi lines. And for anyone out there who's listening and going, what does Cambi mean? You've got to go back and listen to that to that episode that Pace already referenced, where we dive into odds providers and how they work with the sports books. Pace, I know there's some people in the community who are a little bit newer right now because they've been joining over the last couple of months. And some of the comments they've made, it's clear they don't understand how odds providers work. So if you're in the inplayLIVE community and listen to that episode, go back and listen to our odds provider episode. And if you're not in the community, still, it's very important that you understand how odds providers work. So I got off on a bit of a tangent there. Back to Barstool. Barstool was offering Cambi lines. Dave Portnoy sold Barstool to Penn Entertainment. Penn Entertainment then sold the Barstool brand back to Dave Portnoy, which was kind of funny to sort of watch it all unfold. They sold the brand back to Portnoy, but they essentially kept the sports book. And then they reached a deal with ESPNBet, where ESPNBet would take over the sports book itself. And now we have another major sports news network and broadcaster operating in the sports betting space. We saw Fox Bet try to do this and get in on the sports betting gold rush. That didn't work out so well for them. They folded up. But now here we are. We have ESPNBet. Pace, what have you heard so far about ESPNBet?
A few things. So first thing I would say is the discussion that we had previously on an episode about Barstool Sportsbook and the score bet, and the way they handled a whole series of broken lines. We referenced Daniel Jones rushing on this podcast. They are the same company now. So that is the book that we're referencing. A lot of those bad lines and a lot of this bad UI, it's just a bad site. They really haven't caught up from an overall developer standpoint in their product, both in the odds provider that they're using, which, like you said, they switched off of Cambi, their internal, with their own odds provider, and in that sense, and then also in the user experience, which leads to mostly just sharp players using your sports book. So when you have sort of a really bad site, for lack of a better term, the masses will use the really, really user friendly sites like Bet365, DraftKings, and FanDuel, and maybe BetMGM, and then what you end up having is all these sharp bettors that are looking for these other sports books that then obviously go to a place like Fox Bet, a place like WinBet, a place like ESPNBet. Now, ESPN and Disney, they're big enough. I think they can figure this out. But for the time being, they're probably just going to get a lot of sharp players. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing is, so overall, the site sucks as of right now, right? They can improve. Now, the second thing that I'm seeing is they've tried to capitalize on some social trends, and it's working. So they're offering this no touchdown scorer parlay, and they're claiming that they're the only sports book that
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
right? So,
Exactly.
so they're claiming that they're the only sports book that offers it. Now, what they've done is worked with some influencers, parlayed some promotions and things like that to get that message out there, and that is working. So all over social media now are people trying to hit these no first touchdown or no touchdown score parlays. So as an example, it's Monday Night Football this past week. We're shooting this. We haven't watched it yet, but is a pretty big matchup. The Eagles are playing the Chiefs. So you might take some players that are, against you in fantasy, because a lot of people have Chiefs and Eagles fantasy players playing, and you want to bet with your fantasy team. So you bet for your opponent not to score touchdowns. You can bet a whole bunch of players that aren't likely to score a touchdown to and parlay them together to try to get plus money on a bunch of these guys not to score. So there's this whole trend of people trying to hit these no touchdown score bets. I think I don't have access to that information, but I think that is probably going to be a negative EV wager or situation over the long term. But new books have exploitable markets, so they could. I genuinely don't know, but they could be exploited on the very thing that they're marketing. Finally, the last thing about them that I think is extremely important is they are the first major regulated sports book to enter North America with the rollover requirements on their bonuses of an offshore sports book. So a lot of these promotions that we're seeing from these books, we are getting these 1 and 2x rollovers. And not only that, the books were ripped for them. They were ripped all over the major legislature. The ads had to come down because they're saying things like free bet or risk free. But the rollover was 1 to 2x. So at inplayLIVE, we were licking our chops, teaching people how to turn those bonuses into free money. And with such little rollover, it was very simple to do. So much so that a lot of these books that if you just opened up new accounts, got all the bonuses, played them against each other, you could find yourself with a nifty 4+ figure starting bankroll or extra money from flipping these bonuses over. Very easy to do. So this ESPNBet, they brought in the 20x rollover, which is something that you see offshore. So if you deposited $1,000 to maximize their $1,000 deposit bonus, you would have to wager $20,000, and not just any 20 grand. There's certain odd requirements to hit at $20,000, which is very challenging for the average player to roll over in a short period of time in order to actually have access to your money. So you're locked in their ecosystem. Now, with all that said, if you're watching this and being like, oh, I just won't take the bonus there, at inplayLIVE, since we do make high volume plus expected value wagers that we call value wagers, since we do that and we are wagering live, a 20x rollover usually for me is a cakewalk. I don't know what your experience is like that with that, Shane, but when you're wagering live and you're betting this stuff anyways, I just view that as a free $1,000 as long as I have the ability to roll it over. And where things get really sketchy is when they limit you right away, and then you can't roll the money over, but you're still required to. And there are many stories of inplayLIVE of members making $1 bets to roll over 20 grand. So they're making hundreds of $1 bets every single day just to get their money unlocked. So there's that to be aware of. But I guess what I'm getting at is, even if it is a 20x rollover, I'm not saying to take the bonus. I'm saying wagering with the style that we have, or some of the styles that we have, make 20x a pretty easy feat to accomplish. So that's what I know about ESPN.
Yeah, I think you nailed it by saying, within the community, rolling over 20x is, well, first of all, we understand what the rollover is. We know what that means. We see that portion of the fine print and are able to sort of make a fact-informed decision to accept the rollover requirements, and then proceed to roll it over because we know we're going to be making so many wagers. And I've never been limited before completing a rollover, so I'm lucky in that sense. But I think the average recreational bettor out there who may be listening to us here has no idea what rollover even means, or has never actually rolled anything over before, and they don't know what that little bit of fine print means, if it says 5x, 15x, or in this case of ESPN 20x, which is a significant amount of rollover, right? I think they could easily be caught off and not, but not understanding what that means and what those requirements mean to unlock those funds. And so, there's a certain amount of education that needs to take place amongst average recreational sports bettors to kind of understand that. And I don't know if ESPN Bet is making that very clear to people when they sign up about what it means to roll over. But I think there's a lot of people out there who probably don't understand what that means. And that's what we're here for. That's why we do the show, to help you understand what it means. So I'm glad you sort of touched on that, because I think that's a really important thing for people to get their heads around and understand. Now you mentioned the interface. I wanted to bring that up too, because I thought this was hilarious. But I think it was yesterday on the stream, we had the golden goose himself, Kenny, out there saying it took him 15 minutes to spin in a bet. I think this was his quote. It takes 15 minutes to spin a bet. It sucks. It has the worst UI I've ever seen. This was Kenny. It just made me laugh knowing that we were going to be here talking about it on the show, but obviously you're not alone in thinking it's so bad. But Penn is expected to spend $1.5 billion to support this brand and help it gain market share. So they're willing to put the money into it. As you mentioned, they have this whole influencer campaign around the whole no touchdown thing. But maybe some of that money is better spent enhancing the product itself.
It's a really tricky argument, right, to succeed. I want these books to stay competitive. I want ESPNBet to get in the conversation. I don't want to see WinBet and FoxBet fall off. And in order to do that, they're going to have to figure something out to be competitive, because people genuinely just will not use the site, because a guy like Kenny or any inplayLIVE member for that matter, they're going to be the ones that stick it out, because they'll be like, okay, I know on this book I have to wait for a timeout. This is where they're soft. This is why I'm taking advantage of them and why I'm using them, right? Versus the average recreational player, where they can't spin that bet in, and they go, well, I'll just place it at DraftKings. I'll place it at FanDuel, and it's done. It's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other side of this too, about remaining competitive, I wonder if a company like ESPN, a broadcaster owned by the Walt Disney Corporation, would be willing to go in the BetVision direction and sort of bring that, into the platform. I mean, it might compete though with some of its other, products that are being broadcast over traditional broadcasting. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it's something that kind of has me thinking. I wonder if.
Oh, certainly. I think with this live data information, the way we're viewing games is obviously going to change over time, and it's the tip of the iceberg with what's to come in the industry as a whole. So it's exciting stuff. I love following it all, and I think that ultimately to exploit all this stuff, it's great to join inplayLIVE. You can use the promo code Behind the Lines if you want to check us out and get a bit of a discount there. But staying on top of this stuff is important, because you just never know with these new books, where you find something that's available for maybe one day only, and that one day might be potentially life-changing in the opportunity that it presented. So staying on top of that stuff, being in a community where multiple people have eyes on those different opportunities. And you start asking questions like, what was the one on Saturday? This was a good one. It actually, I think it might have been ESPNBet. It was either ESPNBet or Hard Rock. Shane, you weren't on, but it's a great one. So there's 14 points in the first quarter of the LSU college football game. LSU has the ball on their own 35-yard line. I believe there's 4 minutes left in the quarter, and everywhere has over 14.5 points in the quarter at plus money. So 2.0, 2.5 plus 150, that kind of thing. And someone goes, hey, I think it was ESPNBet or whatever it was, one of the these soft books. And he goes, they have under 20.5 in the quarter, and it's plus money. So you have a big arbitrage and middle potential.
And it's plus money. Oh, jeez.
You have a big arbitrage or middle opportunity there. And if you don't know what that means, you could take the over on one book, the under on the other book, and provided that both of those books will pay out. So that's always a question, is if there is a bad line, will that company actually pay out that line? In this particular example, you could have a field goal to win both bets, 2 field goals to win both bets, or a touchdown with a missed conversion to win both bets. And it's funny because just because a book is soft or has a bad line doesn't mean that you necessarily like it. And I saw the message come in the chat. He asked me if he should take it. And I said, look, like if you want a middle or arbit, by all means go nuts. But the line shouldn't be there. It's a bad line. So there's theoretical value on it. And I'm like, if I had that line in front of me right now, I would absolutely not bet it because LSU's playing, I don't know what it was. And I'm like, they tend to score. So bam, LSU goes down the field, scores the TD, and the book with the soft line got rewarded for posting it in the first place. And I know that there are sharp sports books that hate those scenarios, and they'll actually just close their lines once they've been hit a certain amount, because irrelevant of them having the right line and the sharp line, they know that the other sports book has exposed them to significant risk in that spot that they don't want to take. But yeah, really good example of a community having eyes in that spot where all it takes is one person on one game. There's hundreds of games on. College basketball's got, however many games on at once, like literally well into the double digits, maybe even potentially 100 games at one time. Sometimes it's nuts. And then we got dozens of college football games and NBA, NHL, NFL. It's all running, right? So not that excludes obviously, tennis, soccer, all the other things going on. And it just takes a big community where people are like-minded looking, and you go, bam, we have an opportunity here and we can exploit them. So that happened in that case. That happened to lose, but with these new books, ESPNBet, Hard Rock, the legalization in Florida, Hard Rock's becoming more prominent, obviously, because that's their main book in Florida is Hard Rock right now. So, but other people have access to those lines. You get these opportunities. They come your way.
Yeah. We were going to talk more about that, but I'm glad you brought it up. I'll just reference it very quickly. It's crazy what's happening in Florida right now. This indigenous tribe, the Seminole tribe, has this monopoly on sports betting in Florida because they own the brand Hard Rock within the state. And right now they're the only organization allowed to provide sports betting to anyone in the state. So if you want to bet on sports in that state, you have to use the Seminole tribe's Hard Rock product. And it's pretty amazing. We'll see how it all plays out legally, because there's a whole bunch of cases, but one case that was just before the state Supreme Court got shot down, essentially maintaining the status quo for this Seminole tribe. Really, really sort of fascinating there. And that's what we're here for on Behind the Lines, to keep all of you up to date on the latest news and trends in the sports betting world. I know that we talk a lot about what we're doing at inplayLIVE, and we like to talk about the sports that are sort of taking off in action, but a big part of what we're doing too is trying to bring you the latest news and updates and that kind of stuff, so that you can be aware, stay informed, and potentially exploit some books and make some money over the long term. All right, Pace, you brought up college basketball. There is a ton of college basketball taking place right now, underway. I've got to get to that. All right, I'm going to take off and dial into some lines. All right,
Cheers.
buddy. Till next time, keep eating those books, buddy. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join inplayLIVE, use promo code Behind the Lines.